They had been watching Earth for 200 years. They had seen humans discover electricity. They had watched them build planes and rockets. They had listened to their radio signals and studied their television broadcasts. And they had decided that this small blue planet would be easy to conquer. The empire stretched across 6 star systems. They had conquered 47 worlds and enslaved dozens of species. Their fleet was massive. Their weapons were powerful. Their shields could stop any attack that primitive species could throw at them. In 1,000 years of conquest, they had never lost a single war. Commander Al stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at Earth through the viewing screen. The planet looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds. It reminded him of in a way, a beautiful prize for the Empire. "Begin the descent," he ordered. "Position all 12 motherships over their major population centers." The fleet moved in perfect formation. Each mothership was 5 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a continent. They descended through the clouds slowly, making sure the humans below could see them. Fear was a weapon, and they used it well. In New York City, people stopped in the streets and looked up. A massive shadow fell over Manhattan as the alien ship blocked out the morning sun. Car horns stopped. Conversations ended. For a moment, the city that never sleeps fell completely silent. Then the screaming started. The same scene played out in cities around the world. Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo, Paris, Berlin, Mumbai, Cairo, Sydney, Mexico City. 12 cities, 12 ships. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe. At the Pentagon, General Jake Harrison was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when his phone rang. He answered it on the first ring. "Sir, we have a situation," said the voice on the other end. "Multiple unidentified objects entering our atmosphere. They're not ours, sir." Harrison put down his coffee. "How many?" 12, sir, and they're huge. Bigger than anything we've ever seen." Within 3 minutes, Harrison was in the Situation Room. Screens covered every wall, showing footage from cities around the globe. The alien ships hovered in perfect silence, their dark hulls reflecting no light. Lieutenant Amy Sanders sat at the communications console, her hands shaking slightly as she worked. "Sir, they're broadcasting something, all frequencies. The computer is trying to translate." "Put it on speaker," Harrison ordered. The room filled with a cold, mechanical voice. It spoke in perfect English, but there was something wrong with it. Something empty, like a machine pretending to be alive. "People of Earth, your planet is now under our control. You have 1 hour to surrender. Lay down your weapons. Cease all resistance. Comply and you will be allowed to serve the Empire. Resist and you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." The message ended. The room stayed silent. Harrison looked around at his officers. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else. He saw anger. These were men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting their country, their planet, and now some alien empire was telling them to give up without a fight. He picked up the phone and called the president. "Mr. President, I assume you received the message." "I did, General. What are our options?" Harrison looked at the screens. 12 alien ships, 12 cities, millions of people in danger. The math was simple, the choice was not. "Sir, their shields appear to be strong. Conventional weapons probably won't work, but we have other options." There was silence on the other end. The president knew what Harrison meant. "You're talking about nuclear weapons?" "Yes, sir, all of them. The fallout alone would kill hundreds of thousands of our own people." Harrison closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter in Virginia, his in Ohio, the millions of innocent people who would die if they did this. "Sir, if we don't fight back, we lose everything. Every person on this planet becomes a slave. Our entire species, our entire history, everything we've ever built. Gone." Another pause, then the president spoke. "Contact our allies, all of them. Russia, China, France, Britain, everyone with nuclear capability. Tell them we're not surrendering. Tell them we fight together or we die together." Harrison felt a cold wave of determination wash over him. "Yes, sir." In the next 45 minutes, something happened that had never happened before in human history. Every nuclear-armed nation on Earth agreed to work together. Old enemies became allies. Old grudges were set aside. For the first time ever, humanity spoke with one voice. And that voice said no. In Moscow, General coordinated with his American counterparts. In Beijing, Commander Wei prepared his arsenal. In London, Paris, and similar scenes played out. Submarines received orders. Missile silos opened. Bombers took to the skis. They watched all of this from their ships. They detected the radio communications. They saw the military movements, but they did not understand what they were seeing. "Commander," the tactical officer reported, "the humans appear to be mobilizing their military forces." Al made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Let them. Their primitive weapons cannot harm us. Our shields have withstood attacks from far more advanced species." "Should we respond?" "No, let them waste their energy. When their hour is up, we will demonstrate our power, destroy one of their smaller cities. They will surrender soon enough." But Al had made a mistake, a terrible, fatal mistake. He had studied Earth's military capabilities. He had analyzed their weapons and their defenses. He had calculated that humanity's nuclear arsenal, while impressive by primitive standards, could not threaten his fleet. What he failed to understand was the scale. During the Cold War, humans had built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their own planet many times over. Enough weapons to kill every living thing on Earth 10 times. And even though the Cold War had ended, most of those weapons still existed, hidden in silos, loaded on submarines, ready to launch at a moment's notice. More importantly, Al did not understand humans. He did not understand that this species had spent its entire history fighting itself. He did not understand that they had perfected the art of war over thousands of years. He did not understand that when threatened with extinction, humans did not surrender. They got angry. With 15 minutes left on the clock, General Harrison received confirmation from every nuclear-armed nation. Every missile was ready. Every bomber was in position. Every submarine had surfaced and locked onto its targets. He picked up the phone one last time. "Mr. President, we're ready." "Do it." Harrison turned to his officers. These were good men and women. They had families. They had dreams. And they were about to make the hardest decision in human history. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," he said. "I want them to hear this." Lieutenant Sanders nodded and pressed a button. A light turned green. Harrison cleared his throat and spoke. "This is General Jake Harrison of the United States Armed Forces, speaking on behalf of the planet Earth. We have received your message. We have a counteroffer." He paused and looked at the screens one more time. 12 alien ships, 12 cities, and behind those ships the entire might of human civilization ready to strike. "You have 30 seconds to leave our planet. If you do not, we will destroy you. This is your only warning." The channel closed. The countdown began. And somewhere in the depths of space, they were about to learn why you should never underestimate humanity. Commander Al listened to the human's message and felt nothing but amusement. In 1,000 years of conquest, many species had threatened none had ever succeeded. This primitive race with their chemical rockets and nuclear toys would be no different. "Ignore them," he said to his officers. "They are simply posturing. When the hour ends, we will teach them the price of defiance." But the hour never ended. At exactly 7:09 a.m. Eastern Time, the first missiles launched. They rose from the plains of North Dakota like angry fireflies, their engines burning bright against the morning sky. Seconds later, more missiles followed from Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. Across the Atlantic, British submarines surfaced in the North Sea. French missiles left their silos in the countryside. Russian rockets burst from hidden launchers in Siberia. In the Pacific, American submarines released their payload. Chinese missiles streaked upward from mobile launchers. Indian rockets joined the swarm, followed by Israeli missiles from the Mediterranean. Even North Korea, isolated and suspicious, launched everything they had. Within 2 minutes, over 3,000 nuclear warheads were racing toward the 12 alien ships. On the flagship, the tactical officer stared at his screen with growing horror. "Commander, multiple launches detected. They appear to be nuclear weapons." "How many?" Al asked, unconcerned. The officer checked his readings twice before answering. "All of them, Commander. They have launched all of them." For the first time in his long career, Al felt a small twinge of uncertainty, but he pushed it aside. The shields would hold. They always held. "Prepare for impact," he ordered, "and ready our weapons. Once this foolish display is over, we will respond with overwhelming force." At Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, Colonel Davis watched the missiles on his screen. Each one was a dot of light, racing upward toward the alien ships. Behind him, Captain Lisa Monroe coordinated with allies around the world, making sure every launch was on target. "First wave will reach the New York ship in 4 minutes, she reported. Davis nodded. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. If this didn't work, humanity was finished. There was no backup plan, no second chance. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "What about civilian evacuations?" he asked. "Still ongoing, but most people are refusing to leave. They want to see this." Davis understood. If these were humanity's last moments, people wanted to face them standing up. The first missiles reached the mothership over New York at 7:14 a.m. They struck the shields in rapid succession, each one releasing the energy of millions of tons of explosives. The sky over Manhattan turned white as nuclear fire engulfed the alien vessel. When the light faded, the ship was still there, smoking, damaged, but intact. "Shields are holding," reported an officer on the flagship. "Minor damage to hull plating, but structural integrity is maintained." Al allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "You see, I told you, these primitives cannot harm us." But his satisfaction was short-lived. Because the first wave was just the beginning. The second wave hit 30 seconds later. Another 40 warheads, striking the same ship from every angle. The shields flickered and sparked, absorbing energy that would have melted mountains. Then came the third wave, and the fourth, and the fifth. The shields were designed to handle massive attacks. They could withstand plasma cannons and kinetic impactors and directed energy weapons, but they had never faced anything like this. Humanity was not just throwing nuclear weapons at them. Humanity was throwing every nuclear weapon, thousands upon thousands of warheads, each one carrying the fire of a small sun. At 7:21 a.m., the shields over the New York ship began to fail. Blue energy crackled across the surface as the protective barrier struggled to regenerate. Small gaps appeared, quickly filled but leaving the ship vulnerable. "Commander," the tactical officer shouted, "shields at 40% and falling. We need to retreat." "Hold position," Al ordered. "We will not flee from primitives." It was the last order he ever gave. At 7:27 a.m., 17 nuclear warheads passed through the failing shields and struck the mothership directly. The vessel that had terrorized dozens of worlds, that had carried the flag of the Empire across the stars, was vaporized in an instant. From the streets of Manhattan, survivors watched the alien ship disappear in a ball of nuclear fire. The shockwave broke windows for miles and the heat scorched buildings, but the ship was gone. The monster was dead. And humanity was just getting started. In London, the same scene played out. Wave after wave of nuclear strikes battered the alien shields until they collapsed. The mothership over the Thames tried to rise higher, tried to escape the bombardment, but it was too slow. British and French warheads caught it at 50,000 feet and tore it apart. Over Moscow, Russian missiles proved especially effective. The ship attempted to return fire, destroying 2 incoming missiles with energy beams. But for every missile they destroyed, 10 more took its place. The mathematics of destruction were not in their favor. In Beijing, the Chinese approach was different. They had anticipated that the aliens might try to flee, so they launched missiles in a spreading pattern that created a wall of nuclear fire. When the ship attempted to escape, it flew directly into the trap. One by one, the mighty invasion fleet fell. Tokyo, Paris, Berlin, Mumbai, Cairo, Sydney, Mexico City. 12 ships had descended upon Earth with dreams of conquest. 12 ships became 12 expanding clouds of radioactive debris. The entire battle lasted exactly 20 minutes. At 7:29 a.m., the last ship was destroyed over Mexico City. Colonel Davis watched the final explosion on his screen and felt tears running down his face. He was not crying from sadness. He was crying because it was over, because humanity had won. "All targets destroyed," Captain Monroe reported, her voice shaking. "The invasion is over." Around the world, people emerged from their shelters and hiding places. They looked up at skies that were still glowing from nuclear fire. They breathed air that would carry radiation for years, and they celebrated. In Times Square, a crowd gathered despite the danger. Someone had brought a flag, and soon more flags appeared. American flags and Chinese flags and Russian flags, British flags and Indian flags, flags from every nation waving together in the smoke-filled air. They had done it. They had actually done it. The cost was terrible. Hundreds of thousands of people were dead or dying from radiation exposure. Power grids across 3 continents had been destroyed by electromagnetic pulses. Communication networks were in ruins. The cleanup would take decades. But humanity had survived. On a secure line, General Harrison received reports from every theater of combat. 12 ships destroyed. No survivors detected. Complete victory. He allowed himself one deep breath, then pushed aside his relief. The immediate danger was over, but he knew this was only the beginning. "Get me the president," he said. "We need to talk about what comes next." Because somewhere out there among the distant stars the Empire still existed. They would learn what had happened here. They would send more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. And next time humanity might not be so lucky. The invasion had lasted 20 minutes, but the war, Harrison knew, was just beginning. In the wreckage of an alien ship that had crashed in rural Montana, something still beeped. A signal, faint but steady, was broadcasting into the depths of space. A distress call, carrying news of defeat back to the. The message was simple: we were wrong, they fight back, send everything. The message would take months to reach its destination, but when it arrived, they would respond. They had never lost a war, and they did not intend to start now. What they did not know, what they could not possibly imagine, was that humanity was not going to wait for them. For the first time in history, human beings looked up at the stars and saw not wonder but targets, not mysteries but enemies, not distant lights but battlefields. The aliens had come to conquer Earth. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had awakened humanity's hunger for the stars, and now nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The weeks after the invasion were hard, very hard. Power was gone in most of the eastern United States. Hospitals ran on backup generators until the fuel ran out. People died in the dark, not from alien weapons, but from the simple lack of electricity. Radiation clouds drifted across borders, carried by winds that did not care about politics. Cleanup crews worked in protective suits, measuring invisible poison in the air and water. Entire neighborhoods were evacuated, never to be lived in again. The official death count reached 300,000 within the first month. Experts said the number would climb much higher as radiation sickness took its toll. But humanity did not have time to mourn, because amid the destruction, they had found something incredible. Dr. Palmer was a physicist from MIT. Before the invasion, he had spent his career studying theories about faster-than-light travel. Most of his colleagues thought he was wasting his time. Such technology, they said, was centuries away if it was possible at all. Then the aliens arrived, and suddenly theories became very important. The Pentagon sent him to Montana, where one of the alien ships had crashed relatively intact. A military helicopter dropped him in a field surrounded by burned trees and twisted metal. The smell of smoke still hung in the air. "Welcome to Ground Zero," said Captain Emma Wright, the officer in charge of the site. "Try not to touch anything until we know it's safe." Nodded and followed her toward the wreckage. The alien ship was enormous, even in pieces. Its hull was made of a metal he did not recognize, dark gray and strangely warm to the touch despite the cold mountain air. "We've secured a path to the interior," Emma explained. "The structural integrity seems stable, but we're still finding surprises." "What kind of surprises?" "The kind that glow in the dark and make counters scream." Inside the ship felt like he was walking through a dream. The corridors were too tall, designed for beings larger than humans. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with internal light. The air smelled wrong, metallic and sweet. They found the control room on the third day of exploration. It was mostly destroyed, but one console remained intact. When touched it, holographic displays sprang to life around him. He spent 3 weeks learning to read those displays. 3 weeks of sleeping on a cot in a military tent, eating cold rations, and staring at alien symbols until his eyes burned. And then, one cold Tuesday morning, he cracked it. "Get me a secure line to Washington," he told Emma, his hands shaking with excitement. "I know where they came from. I know everything." The briefing took place in an underground bunker beneath the White House. President sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by military officers and government officials. Stood at a screen, trying to explain concepts that had taken him weeks to understand. Their navigational database was mostly intact, he said. It contained star charts, coordinates, and historical records going back over 1,000 years. He pressed a button, and a three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared in the air. Dozens of stars were highlighted in red. "These are the worlds they have conquered, 47 planets across 6 star systems. Each one contains a species that has been enslaved by the Empire." General Harrison leaned forward, and there, highlighted another star, this one in deep space far from the others. Prime, about 300 light-years from Earth. It's the center of their empire. Secretary of Defense Nancy Brooks studied the map with cold eyes. "What do we know about their military capabilities, beyond what we saw during the invasion?" Based on the records, the fleet they sent to Earth was relatively small, a scouting force designed for easy conquests. Their main battle fleet is much larger, hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. The room fell silent. The victory over the 12 invasion ships suddenly felt less impressive. "However," continued, "I also found something else, something that changes everything." He brought up a schematic on the screen. It showed a complex device, full of curves and angles that hurt the eyes to follow. "This is their faster-than-light engine. They use something they call fold space technology. It essentially creates a shortcut through space-time, allowing ships to travel between star systems in hours instead of centuries." "And we can build this?" the president asked. "With the complete blueprints they left behind. Yes, sir. It will take time and resources, but yes, we can build ships that travel faster than light." The implications hung in the air. For the first time in history, the stars were within reach. Harrison stood up and walked to the map. He stared at the 47 conquered worlds, then at the... "They'll come back," he said. "Once they receive the distress signal from the ships we destroyed, they'll send a larger fleet. We need to be ready." "How long do we have?" the president asked. Did the calculations in his head. The distress signal travels at light speed. It will take about 300 years to reach Prime, but they have relay stations throughout their territory. The closest one is only about 20 light years away, so we have maybe 5 years, 10 at most. Then we have work to do. The president turned to his advisors. "I want a proposal on my desk by end of week. We need to bring every nation on board. This isn't about America anymore. This is about humanity." Within 3 months, the United Earth Defense Initiative was born. It was the largest cooperative effort in human history. Every nation contributed resources, scientists, and workers. Old enemies worked side by side, united by a common threat. Factories that once built cars now built spaceship components. Universities that once competed for funding now shared research freely. Military bases around the world became training grounds for a new kind of soldier. And at the center of it all, Dr. Palmer led a team of engineers who worked around the clock to unlock the secrets of alien technology. "We're not just copying their designs," he told a reporter during a rare interview. "We're improving them. Humans have a gift for taking ideas and making them better, faster, more efficient, more deadly." He paused and looked at the camera with tired but determined eyes. "They made a mistake attacking us. They could have left us alone, let us develop on our own, and we might have stayed on Earth forever. But they threatened our survival. They showed us that the universe is dangerous. And now we're going to show them what happens when you corner a species that has spent its entire history learning how to fight." 3 years later, the first human starship launched from a joint American-Russian facility in Kazakhstan. It was called the Defiance, and it carried a crew of 60 brave men and women into the unknown. The ship was ugly by alien standards. It looked like a steel brick with engines strapped to one end and weapons bolted to every surface. But it worked. When the Defiance completed its first faster-than-light jump, traveling to Mars and back in under 3 hours, the crew cheered and cried and hugged each other. On Earth, billions of people watched the footage and felt hope for the first time since the invasion. Humanity was going to the stars. And this time they were not going as victims. They were going as warriors. Captain Collins stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked out at the stars. They were different here, 40 light years from Earth. Different patterns, different colors, but still beautiful. "Jump successful," reported Navigator. "We are now in the system, matching coordinates from the alien database." Nodded and studied the tactical display. According to the records, this system contained a conquered world called Seven. Its people had been slaves for over 200 years. Today, that was going to change. "Take us in slowly," ordered. "I want full sensor sweeps. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." The Defiance moved forward, its engines humming with power that would have seemed like magic just 5 years ago. Behind it, 4 more human warships followed in formation: the Retribution, the Vengeance, the Reckoning, and the Fury. 5 ships, 250 crew members, the first human expeditionary force to leave their home system. On Earth, they were heroes before they had even done anything. Their faces were on posters and news broadcasts. Children played with toy versions of their ships. Songs were written about their courage. But did not feel like a hero. He felt scared. They had conquered 47 worlds. They had enslaved species that were far more advanced than humanity had been just a decade ago. What made him think that 5 ships could make a difference? "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Price from the sensor station, "I'm detecting a military installation on the 4th planet. Looks like a garrison with orbital defense platforms. How many ships? 8 patrol vessels, smaller than ours but faster, and the orbital platforms have heavy weapons. Studied the data on his screen. The odds were not great, but they were better than he had expected. The clearly did not think anyone would attack them this far from the front lines. Open a channel to the fleet, he said. All ships prepare for combat. We go in fast and hit hard. Priority targets are the orbital platforms. Once those are down, we deal with the patrol vessels. Admiral Harrison had trained them well. In the 2 years since the fleet launched, they had practiced every possible combat scenario hundreds of times. They knew their ships, they knew their weapons, and they knew that failure was not an option. All ships report ready, said Communications Officer Cole. Took a deep breath, then let's go free a planet. The battle for 7 lasted 6 hours. The garrison was caught completely off guard. They had not received any warning about a hostile fleet in their territory. Their patrol vessels scrambled to respond, but human ships were faster and hit harder than anything they had encountered before. The Defiance took the lead, its main cannon tearing through the first orbital platform like it was made of paper. The Retribution followed, targeting the power generators that supplied the garrison below. The Vengeance and Reckoning engaged the patrol vessels, their smaller guns filling space with deadly light. The Fury hung back, protecting the fleet from flanking attacks and picking off any ship that tried to escape. By the 3rd hour, half the fleet was destroyed and 2 of the orbital platforms were dark. They're retreating, Amy reported. The surviving patrol vessels are attempting to leave the system. Let them go, decided. We want them to spread the word. Let the Empire know that humanity is coming. When the last orbital platform fell, Commander Bate Turner led a ground team to the planet's surface. She was a former Marine, tough as nails and twice as sharp. Her squad of 30 soldiers was the first to set foot on an alien world. What they found broke their hearts. There were small, gentle beings with large eyes and soft fur. Before they came, they had been artists and musicians, builders of beautiful cities and creators of wonderful machines. Now they were slaves, forced to work in mines and factories for masters who saw them as nothing more than tools. Bate walked through the capital city with her weapon ready, but there was no resistance. The guards had fled with their masters. Only the slaves remained. An elderly approached her carefully, his large eyes filled with fear and hope in equal measure. He spoke in a language she did not understand, but the meaning was clear. He was asking if they were really free. Bate knelt down to his level and smiled. We are humans from Earth. We have come to set you free. The translation device in her helmet converted her words into the language. The old alien listened, then began to shake. Tears streamed down his furry face as he turned to the crowd behind him and shouted something in his native tongue. The reaction was immediate, poured out of buildings and hiding places, surrounding the human soldiers with cries of joy. They touched the soldiers' armor with trembling hands, as if to make sure they were real. News of the liberation spread quickly. Within days, everyone on the planet knew that their 200-year nightmare was over. Celebrations lasted for weeks. Back on Earth, the footage from 7 was broadcast to every screen on the planet. People watched the weeping with joy and felt something they had not expected to feel. Pride. Not just pride in their military victory, but pride in what that victory meant. Humanity had not gone to the stars as conquerors or tyrants. They had gone as liberators. Admiral Harrison watched the footage from his office at United Earth Defense Headquarters. He had seen many things in his long military career, but nothing like this. 1 down, he said quietly to himself, 46 to go. The liberation of 7 changed everything. Other conquered species, who had lost all hope of freedom, suddenly saw a possibility they had never imagined. A new power had risen in the galaxy, a power that was willing to fight the word spread through secret channels and smuggler networks. The humans are coming. The humans fight back. The humans win. Volunteers began arriving at Earth. Scientists and engineers from a dozen species, eager to share their knowledge in exchange for a chance to free their warriors who had been waiting for any excuse to rebel against their masters. The coalition grew stronger by the day. By 2033, the human fleet had grown to 23 warships. They had liberated 5 more worlds and destroyed dozens of vessels. Each victory brought new allies and new resources. They contributed advanced medical technology that could heal wounds in minutes. They, freed from their prison planet, offered shipbuilding techniques that made human vessels even faster. Though a species of brilliant engineers helped improve weapon systems beyond anything humans could have developed alone. But the backbone of the fleet remained human. The species that had gone from primitive radio signals to interstellar warfare in a single decade. The species that had looked extinction in the face and refused to blink. On the bridge of the newly launched Unconquered, the largest and most powerful warship ever built by human hands, Admiral Mitchell reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "They are consolidating their forces," his aide reported. "They're pulling ships back from the outer territories to protect their." Mitchell smiled grimly. "Good, let them gather together. It will make them easier to destroy." "Sir, some of the alien advisors think we should slow down, take more time to build up our forces. The main fleet is still much larger than ours." Mitchell turned to face the young officer. "Son, do you know what the most dangerous thing in the universe is?" "No, sir." "A human with nothing left to lose." He turned back to the stars. "We almost lost everything. Our planet, our species, our entire history, that taught us that the universe is not a safe place, that if we want to survive, we have to be the most dangerous thing out there." He paused and looked at the fleet forming around the Unconquered. 200 ships from a dozen species, all following human leadership. "We're not going to slow down. We're not going to give them time to prepare. We're going to hit them fast, hit them hard, and keep hitting them until there's nothing left." The officer nodded. "Yes, sir." "Get me the fleet commanders. It's time to plan our final assault." The battle for Prime was about to begin. The coalition fleet gathered at the edge of space. 217 warships from 13 different species, stretching across the void like a wall of steel and determination. At the center of the formation sat the Unconquered, its massive hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge, surrounded by officers from half a dozen worlds. "Final status report," he ordered. Commander Torres, his tactical officer, checked his displays. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, crews are standing by." Mitchell nodded. He looked around at the faces of his bridge crew. Humans and aliens working side by side, united by a common purpose. 7 years ago, this would have been impossible. Now it was humanity's greatest achievement. "Open a channel to the fleet," he said. Communications Officer Kate Murphy pressed a button. "Channel open, sir. All ships receiving." Mitchell straightened his uniform and spoke. "Warriors of the coalition. For 7 years we have fought together, bled together, died together. We have liberated 47 worlds from slavery. We have proven that tyranny will not stand when good beings stand against it." He paused and looked at the star chart on his screen. Prime was just 1 jump away. "Today we face our greatest challenge. The is defended by their entire remaining fleet. Hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons. They will fight desperately because they have nowhere left to run." His voice grew harder. "But we will fight harder. We fight for our homes, for our families, for every species that has suffered under boots. We fight for a galaxy where children do not grow up as slaves." He clenched his fist. 7 years ago, they came to Earth. They gave us 1 hour to surrender. We gave them 20 minutes of nuclear fire. Today, we finish what they started." He nodded to Kate. "All ships begin jump sequence. We end this now." The fleet jumped. Prime was beautiful in a cruel sort of way. A massive world, twice the size of Earth, covered in gleaming cities and towering spires. For 1,000 years, this had been the heart of an empire that stretched across star systems. Today, it would become a symbol of that empire's defeat. The fleet was waiting for them, 400 warships arranged in a defensive formation around there. Their shields were up, their weapons charged. They had known this day would come. "Enemy fleet detected," reported. "They outnumber us almost 2-1. Mitchell smiled. "Then it's almost a fair fight." The commander broadcast a message. Unlike the cold, mechanical voice that had threatened Earth 7 years ago, this one was filled with rage. "Humans, you have gone too far. Turn back now, and we will allow you to live as servants. Continue this foolishness, and we will destroy you utterly." Mitchell actually laughed. "Open a channel, I want to respond." Kate connected him. "This is Admiral Mitchell of the United Earth Defense Initiative. 7 years ago, your empire attacked my world without warning. You gave us 1 hour to surrender. We gave you 20 minutes of hell." He leaned forward in his chair. "Today, I offer you the same choice you gave us. Surrender unconditionally or face the consequences. You have 1 hour." The response came in the form of weapons fire. 100 ships surged forward, their guns blazing. "All ships," Mitchell ordered, "engage." The battle for Prime was the largest space battle in recorded history. 2 fleets clashed in the void, their weapons lighting up the darkness like a second sun. The coalition fought with the fury of the oppressed. Every species in the fleet had a score to settle. The whose world had been enslaved for centuries, the who had watched their cities burn, the whose children had been taken as forced laborers. And humanity, who had learned that the universe was full of monsters and decided to become the bigger monster. The Unconquered led the charge, its massive guns tearing through warships like they were made of paper. Admiral Mitchell coordinated the battle from his bridge, moving ships like pieces on a chessboard. "Retribution, cover our flank. Vengeance, take out those support vessels. Fury, I need you to punch through their center." Hours passed. Ships died on both sides, the void filled with debris and bodies and broken dreams. But slowly, steadily, the tide turned. The fleet, for all its size, was fighting defensively. They were trying to protect there, which meant they could not concentrate their forces. The coalition, on the other hand, could focus their attacks wherever they wanted. By the 6th hour, half the fleet was destroyed. The survivors were pulling back, forming a desperate defensive line around their planet. "Admiral," reported, "the enemy flagship is attempting to retreat to the surface." Mitchell checked his display. The command ship was diving toward the planet, trying to escape the battle. "Not today," he said. "Unconquered, pursuit course. All forward weapons target that ship." The massive human vessel surged forward, its engines roaring. The flagship tried to outrun them, but it was too slow, too damaged. One final shot from the Unconquered's main cannon split the enemy ship in 2. With their command ship destroyed, the remaining vessels lost coordination. Some tried to surrender. Others fought to the death. A few attempted to flee, only to be caught by coalition ships waiting at the edge of the system. By the 9th hour, it was over. Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Unconquered, looking at the planet below. The cities of Prime still gleamed in the sunlight, but smoke was rising from several locations. Ground forces were landing, securing key positions. "Admiral," Kate said softly, "the planetary government has surrendered. The war is over." Mitchell closed his eyes. For a moment, he was not an admiral. He was just a man who had seen too much death. He thought of everyone who had died to get them here. The crew members lost in battle, the civilians killed in the initial invasion, the soldiers who had given their lives liberating alien worlds. The price had been terrible, but it had been paid. He opened his eyes and addressed the fleet. To all ships, all crews, all allied forces, the Empire is no more. Today we have proven something to the galaxy. We are not conquerors, we are not tyrants, but we will never ever be victims. Across the fleet, on ships crewed by a dozen different species, the message was received with cheers and tears. On Earth, where it was the middle of the night, people poured into the streets to celebrate. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square just as they had 7 years ago when the invasion ended. But this time there was no fear, only joy. In London and Paris, in Beijing and Moscow, in Tokyo and Sydney, people hugged strangers and wept with relief. The war that had shaped a generation was finally over. And in a small house in Virginia, an old woman named Harrison watched the news with tears streaming down her face. Her son Jake, the general who had coordinated Earth's defense during the invasion, had died 2 years ago from radiation exposure. He never got to see this day. But his grandson, a young lieutenant named Daniel, was serving on the Unconquered, and when the camera panned across the bridge, saw his face among the celebrating crew. Jake would have been so proud. In the weeks that followed, the coalition worked to establish a new order in the galaxy. The people, stripped of their empire, were offered a choice: peaceful coexistence or exile. Most chose peace. Without their military, without their conquered worlds, they were just another species struggling to survive. The liberated worlds formed a new alliance, with Earth at its center. Not because humans demanded it, but because every species agreed that humanity had earned the right to lead. Admiral Mitchell was offered the position of Supreme Commander of the Allied forces. He declined, saying he was too old and too tired. Instead, he recommended a young officer who had distinguished herself in battle. Humans should not rule the galaxy, he told the assembled council. We should protect it. There's a difference. Humanity had come to the stars as warriors. They had fought a terrible war against a terrible enemy. They had sacrificed everything to defend their world and free others. But in the end, their greatest victory was not military. It was proving that power did not have to mean tyranny. That strength could be used to protect the weak instead of oppressing them. The alien invasion had lasted 20 minutes. Earth's response had changed the galaxy forever. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, other species looked up at the sky and saw hope. Because they knew that if they were ever in danger, if they ever faced extinction or enslavement, there was a species out there that would fight for them. A strange species, a dangerous species, a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself, only to unite when faced with a common enemy. They called themselves humans, and the galaxy would never forget them.